Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into the Buster Show podcast. Today, I have the distinct honor in introducing Dave Sethi, who is the head of sports at Instagram, was at Complex before. We met back when I was like 3 years old. But my friend, it's great to have you.
Great to see you. I know we were talking right before this. Looking forward to even the next time when we can do this in person. But no, great to see you. Happy to hear that you and your family are staying safe and healthy, and that you got this podcast up and running. And I'm honored to be a guest on it. So thank you for having me.
Likewise, and thank you. It's still crazy to me that you even said yes to meeting me, because when I was, I don't know, 15 or 16 years old, I used to go to these venture capitalist like meetups where a bunch of tech people would meet up, and I'd just walk up to random people and introduce myself. And this one guy, Brian Sealander, who's a legend, and he's brought me a bunch of opportunities over the years, but he was just like, you need to meet this guy. And I was like, I love Complex. And he put us on an email. And for whatever reason, maybe as a favor to him, I don't know, you said yes to meeting me. I don't even remember a single thing that we talked about when we met. I was just happy to be there.
I remember bringing you to this like small conference room at Complex's office, and I guess it's the power of befriending good people, because yeah, to your point, Brian and I are close friends, and if he's vouching for you, then the least I could do was meet up. But I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to meet this high school student who I think is thinking about not going to college, but seemingly knows more about this industry of social and digital than any professional that I've ever worked with. So it's probably going to be an educational experience for me. But I remember, meeting up and just having my mind a bit blown. But Brian, for folks on this listening to this podcast, Brian Sealander is arguably one, just one of the best people around, but two, one of the most connected people that I've ever had the pleasure of getting to know. So the fact that he was able to bring us together obviously is paying dividends for both of us, given we continue to chat, 4+ years later, man. So, important moment for both of our lives. But, it's also funny too, because Complex, I grew up with Complex, but I probably was the least complex employee, given I'm not a sneakerhead. I don't follow pop culture that closely. I listen to hip hop, but it's more mainstream. So I don't know if you were expecting someone cooler, given when you walked in, someone
No,
who
no,
probably owned
definitely
more of
not.
the ethos of the brand. But yeah, it definitely wasn't me. So
Expectations have been met and exceeded every time I've spoken to you, Rich, who's been on the podcast, and every other. Complex is, they got some dope people. That's
I,
that's what I realized.
I promise to, I listened to part of that podcast. I promise to be not as vulgar as Rich normally is. So if he's setting the bar there, I'll make sure I keep it a little lower than that. So
That's funny. All right, I've got some questions for you, particularly relating to, obviously your current job, head of sports at Instagram. When you first got into that role, uh, you know, what were some of the biggest things that you learned about, these athletes building brands, these companies building sports brands on Instagram that you didn't really know anything about prior?
yeah, I think I was fortunate in that this is my second go around at a tech social company, and that I was at Google and YouTube for 6.5 years. So even if it wasn't necessarily athletes investing in creating and cultivating their brands on YouTube as much as they were on Instagram, some of the principles applied, and especially when you're talking about aspiring and emerging creators that YouTube, is really very popular for in their early heyday of early 2010s. And so some of those principles did apply. I think what I found, given my personal social media usage at the time, this is 2018 when I joined the company, I'm using YouTube, I'm using Instagram, I'm using Twitter, et cetera. But I don't know if I fully realized just how important and useful and preferred Instagram was and is to these athletes in terms of expression, in terms of engaging their fan base, and all those things, and really almost how easy it is relative to other places and platforms, how easy it is for them to be able to do that. And it's the thing that they're creating on between practices. It's the thing that they're on communicating with each other and with their fans. And so I found that out, or I really embraced that and felt that very quickly. And so that was a powerful one for me. And then as a big part of my job is how do we continue to cultivate that that environment and make sure that Instagram continues to be a place that they not only want to create, but they want to use and like to get value in just using our service as a consumer like you and I.
100%. I feel like one of the crazy things that I guess particularly Americans don't realize about sports on Instagram is I imagine soccer is the biggest sport in terms of, I mean, Cristiano Ronaldo is the most followers, Leo Met, like all these guys are disproportionately more followed than LeBron. And it's sort of a hard thing for Americans to wrap their mind around. But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but soccer is the biggest sport on Instagram. What are the fastest growing sports on Instagram?
Yeah, so I mean, to your point, soccer, global football, you got to be careful which term you use when you're talking to certain colleagues at our company. But yeah, it's definitely the biggest sport, and it's actually the beauty of our platform and sports like that, and that the platform doesn't have any borders, right? So you could be a Lionel Messi fan in Argentina who then goes and follows PSG when he signs a new deal, right? Or Cristiano from Portugal is going, and you can follow him in his journey again at Manchester United. And so that to me is an incredible, powerful aspect of our platform, is that it's truly without borders and that athletes have the ability to engage and cultivate fans from far beyond their own backyard. I was just talking to somebody at the Utah Jazz yesterday, and same principle. Yes, you want to engage your fans in your backyard, but your backyard on social is literally the rest of the world. So how do you think about that as the opportunity in terms of other sports, segments that are popular, that are rising, that are growing? Again, unsurprisingly, global football continues to grow. Combat and action sports also continue to grow, and I think you're seeing that rise in popularity. And I would argue on Instagram, but also across social and digital. We have seen growth in action sports, and I would think no surprise you have events like the Olympics and Paralympics where more of those creators, participants are at the forefront of our platforms. And you and I both know this, having been in this industry, but sports like skateboarding, et cetera, have long had like rich history on social platforms, and we're seeing that be a much bigger part of how Instagram is relevant to them, especially these individuals who, now that skate actually is officially in the Olympics, as an example, this being a great place to connect to fans. And the last one, not the last one, but another one worth calling out, if you want to put it in the realm of sports, is fitness and the fitness community that clearly during the pandemic, people were figuring out how do they engage their favorite fitness brands, their favorite fitness creators, trainers, instructors. We obviously have seen growth within that segment, but I think that trend is here to stay and will last far longer than the pandemic, even when gyms open, et cetera, because you now have fans who can uniquely engage their favorite brands and instructors, but you also have those trainers, instructors, creators having unique ways to engage their fans too, beyond just let's show up at a class at 9 a.m. on a Friday. But hey, I can actually engage my favorite instructor, ask them questions, see what their routines are for all the other days of the week that I'm not necessarily in front of them, watching them and trying to follow along in an actual class.
Makes sense. One other sport, somebody said this to me a few years ago. They were like, you should start a cricket page. I was like, I'm not a fan of cricket. I don't know anything about cricket. But then they were like, do you know how many people watch the biggest cricket matches? And I said, no. So I looked it up. 1 billion people watch the biggest matches. That is not true for any other sport that I've seen. I mean, except for like the World Cup, right?
I mean, when I go to India to visit my family and friends there, I embarrass myself with my general lack of knowledge of that sport. But when you go there and you realize that's the thing, and that's only one of the many countries where cricket is firmly established.
Australia too, yeah,
absolutely. And look no further in terms of sort of the proof points of that sport and its future. I mean, the fact that there are any number of investors in the United States who are trying to figure out how they can be meaningful, given you've got a lot of immigrants who have come to the United States who still have that interest or are looking to cultivate that passion and that interest as well. No, cricket is massive, and even if you look at some of the celebrities in that sport, whether they're folks who play in India, the UK, Australia, et cetera, they are as culturally relevant as folks like the LeBron James of the world, who we associate most closely with in America. They're the same level of rock star, so to speak, and folks are following along with them and enjoying their journey as well. So yeah, cricket is, I don't want to say it's a rocket ship necessarily, but I think you're going to be hearing a lot more about it moving forward, especially as more of that content comes on social and digital platforms.
Good content, a lot of diving, a lot of action. I think it's inevitable, like when you look at how, traditional football, was turned into, Major League Soccer and other US leagues. It's inevitable that somebody's going to do it for cricket. I'm surprised that it hasn't been done.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's because there are sort of distributed interests there, and folks haven't figured out a way to break through a very noisy media landscape in the United States. But I think the people who are going to end up winning are ones who don't necessarily try to break through the traditional norms of our media landscape and actually figure unique ways to meet fans, where they are, and come up with different models. I don't pretend to know the inner workings of Paul Rabel's lacrosse league, but
Right.
Clearly he's trying to be an example of how do you build this differently, right? He can go do a deal with NBC Sports, but he can also figure out a way to creatively bring that league and its players to life on social and digital in a way that a lot of other leagues hadn't necessarily contemplated at their inception. And so I think that's where you might see quick growth in sports like cricket, even rugby as an example, which again has a much stronger footprint or foothold in other countries. And there is an appetite in this country, but I do feel like it's a bit decentralized and could probably stand to have a little bit more organization to take it to that next level.
Totally. I think Paul is a really good example, though, of somebody who's sort of laid that blueprint that it's at least possible. You just need that right superstar, right? So it's interesting. If you could see any athlete have social media during their prime, who would it be and why? Would you want to see MJ on social in the 90s? Would you want to see Wilt Chamberlain, on social back when he was in his prime score? What would he have posted on Instagram after he scored 100? Probably that photo.
Probably the photo, right?
Probably that photo. But like, is there any Babe Ruth? Like, is there anybody who you wish were on social, Instagram in their prime?
I think there were. I'm gonna try to give a. Yeah, I'll try to come up with a couple of names here. And I was asked this question a long time ago, and I think my answer has changed. There's three people I think that are top of mind today, and this might change tomorrow if you were to ask me. One, just based on watching the Last Dance docuseries, Dennis Rodman on social. How would you not want to follow along that guy's journey while he was playing in all of his on and off the court endeavors? If endeavors using that term loosely, I think he's probably an obvious one and maybe a must follow across different verticals, whether it's sports, entertainment, etc. So he's one.
One of my best friends was actually running his socials for the last few years.
Okay, gotcha. Nice. So, okay, maybe he still is worth the follow. I just haven't had the chance to do it yet.
Follow. So. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll jump on that train after this call. Then the other two. And I think you'll agree because we're from sort of a couple of different generations here on this call. I feel like this guy who has almost a mythical status in sports from decades ago is Joe Namath. And what would Joe Namath have been like when if he was running his own Instagram account in the heyday of when it was Broadway Joe? And you see how relevant he still is to the community in New York City, but more broadly speaking, football, American football. I wonder what that would have been like given he was such a popular, if not polarizing figure. The last person, and I say it because I was having a conversation with a colleague, and again, this is probably a little before mine and your time, Monica Seles. And so for those who don't follow tennis that closely, but Monica Seles, one of the more decorated female tennis players of all time, we have this, I think, innate interest, especially on social, around teenage athletes. And people don't realize Monica Seles, Coco Gauff is a good example, right? Like prolific success on social, some amazing on the court success too. Monica Seles won 9 Grand Slams while she was a teenager, 9, which is just an unbelievable number. And then she went through getting stabbed on the court during a match, having to go through long, difficult recovery and a borderline unbelievable comeback story to then come back and win another Grand Slam. And so to be able to have experienced that through her personal lens and perspective and going on that journey, and again, as a teenage athlete with more success arguably than any teen athlete has ever had in maybe any sport, I'm like fascinated with the Monica Seles story in general. And I didn't realize until, again, a few months ago, just how much success she had as a young person in that sport. I mean, 9 Grand Slams is outrageous before you're 20 years old.
I mean, people now like go crazy when somebody makes the quarterfinals at, let alone wins like a bunch of majors. That's actually insane.
Yeah, I'm waiting for some 30 for 30 to come out on Monica Seles, and I know her story has been well told in other places, but I really did not realize the level of success she had at such a young age. And again, you know this better than anybody, as a teen or youth or sort of young professional athlete, the things that we get to see from their perspective on social media, on Instagram, it's really special. And I wonder what that would have been like going through and feeling you were a part of her journey at that part of her career. I think would have been a great follow.
100%. Some of the guys that I'm most interested in are those fringe players, like the guys who are playing right before social media, because they only like, or maybe they caught it at the end of their career. Somebody who comes to mind for me as a huge Yankees fan, Derek Jeter, notoriously low key, under the radar, but like had a lot of fun for 20 years as the captain of the New York Yankees. That would be an active social that I'd like to see. And it's funny, like him and Jordan, they still don't have personal Instagrams,
We've tried to broach that topic, I think, a couple of times with some of these folks who don't have social. Like, what if Kawhi had a social handle as well? Some of these folks that have expressed, if not reluctance, haven't had the motivation to do that. But it's funny because I mean, you probably saw the news around Tom Brady sort of releasing his iconic brand. That could have been Jeter, right? Or that maybe that still can be Jeter. 100%. I mean, he transcends sports in many ways. And I believe is he getting inducted into the Hall of Fame this year? I want to say just inducted. Okay, I might have missed the speech, but I mean, again, one of these guys where if you're getting a near unanimous bid to get to the Hall of Fame, you probably do transcend baseball, sports, and frankly your market, even though New York is the biggest market for baseball. So
yeah, now he co-owns the Miami team.
Right.
So pretty crazy. What what do you think is the future of sports creators on IG? Do you think it'll, you were at YouTube prior. Do you think it'll have a similar, monetization layout? There will be longer form videos, still, mostly short form vertical. What do you see as the future for like sports creators on IG?
Yeah. So if you take a step back and think about one of the goals for Instagram, and I would argue this is the case for other platforms, the goal is to enable sports creators to turn their passion into a living on our platform, right? And again, that applies to any number of platforms where people may be building an audience and trying to monetize. Instagram literally just hit its 11th birthday. Work to do in terms of helping creators monetize. We've had some, especially during the pandemic, some incredible product development to help sort of support that charter, as it were, whether it's the launch of our first rev share ads product that we hope will be meaningful in terms of being able to literally do what creators have been able to do on other platforms like YouTube and monetize via ads. But to compare to when I was at YouTube, I mean, that was 9+ years ago. it was just, hey, let me enable ads on my videos. That was the way people monetized back then, by and large. Today, it might be, let me enable my fans to tip when I'm going live, or let me enable them to subscribe to me for exclusive content, to sell exclusive merch, or let me find a brand I can work with who cares about the same things I do and create content, that's branded or sponsored. So to me, in terms of your question around the future of sort of creators and monetization, I view it as, yes, Instagram is heavily invested in figuring out a way to turn those people's passion into a living, but also how do we do it in the ways in which they are already trying to satisfy and delight their fans. And the ways in which they're doing that are much more diverse in 2021 than they were in 2011 when I first joined YouTube. So it makes it a little more complicated, but also that makes the opportunity that much greater. And as you know, I mean, we're doing a podcast right now, but you've created content for your fans and followers across God knows how many formats at this point, whether it's short form video, whether it's live, whether it's podcasting, whether it's IRL.
I really sound like an ad for Facebook, but I started on Facebook and then joined Instagram, and that's what I credit with my career. Seriously. And that's so to your point, it works.
Yeah, and it's why we try to stay so close to, sorry about the lighting again, but yeah, it's why we try to stay so close to creators like yourself. And I feel like creators almost diminishing all the things that you do. You're a creator, you're an entrepreneur, you're an influencer, etc. But it's why we try to stay so close and keenly attuned to the things that you may need or view as opportunities, because it is literally going to inform how an Instagram develops more products and tools to better serve you. And again, if you rewind a decade ago, which in many other industries is not that long a time, but if you rewind a decade ago, it was much simpler. If you were a creator, it was, I create content for a platform, I can monetize via ads, I will make a check that I split with YouTube or whatever platform, and that'll be the way I make money. And again, fast forward now, this creator economy that people are using, as a overused buzz term, that creator economy is as diverse in who the creators are, but also all the different ways in which they can participate in the economy and how they can make money and on which platforms. And so Instagram needs to continue to be at the forefront of that. And I'm really excited to be here and helping inform how we can be better supporting creators in their communities.
Yeah, I mean, there are dozens of ways that somebody could monetize on just Instagram, right? Everything from ad placement to a tip to a partnership to a placement of a song on a video that nobody even knows is an ad. Like, there are a million different ways, and across all of social, I bet there are 100 to 200 plus ways where creators can monetize their content. And also, content, if it's good and evergreen, works everywhere, right? So you just fit it to those, like you cross share it on platforms like Facebook and others. So
yeah, and you, Buster, like, I know you're basically running your own media company right now. So how do you figure out how to maximize those endpoints? How do you figure out a way to maximize what you're creating and its utility across these platforms? I mean, we haven't even touched on something like commerce, right? Which which is clearly an area Instagram is invested in. But you look at what's happening in the college athletic space with name, image, likeness. A lot of these athletes are creating brands that can be tangibly felt by their audience. Go buy the shirt that they're creating in partnership with FanJoy. Go transact with your favorite athletes. And that isn't exclusive to the LeBrons of the world. That is literally, whether you're an 18-year-old who just joined Ohio State as a freshman quarterback, this is choose your own adventure across any different amount of products, tools, platforms, et cetera. And fortunately for us at Instagram, we know this is the place where these athletes, they're holding on to the keys to their own car. They're by and large not giving it to 50 different people to manage a very professional social media presence. These are the guys who are picking up their phone, shooting content and bringing their fans closer. And that can unlock many monetization opportunities, again, whether you're an athlete, a creator, et cetera.
Definitely. And again, back to the college kids, that is that same, interest in young athletes that, applies there. There are some some college athletes that through NIL now are able to make millions of dollars, like millions immediately, like the flip of a light, changes their lives forever. And a lot of these sports, like, you don't go anywhere from rowing in college. Like, sure, you can theoretically go to the Olympics and do this and that, but it's not like, you're Steph Curry and you go from Davidson to the NBA and then become the greatest shooter in history. Even if you're the best rower, people might not know you. So for these kids to have that starting point, if you make $5 to $10 million a year and just put that in an index fund, you would make a living every year off of that. And I think it's amazing.
I agree, and NIL is something that I personally, as a college sports fan, have thought about for years now. As an industry professional, have been putting effort behind for the past year or so to make sure that these athletes turned content creators understand the value and they can gain out of being on Instagram, engaging their fans on Instagram, et cetera. But it's so economically empowering to this generation. I've actually never seen before the level of entrepreneurism out of a generation of athletes and young people that I think is being cultivated by the fact that there are all these options for how you can build brands and monetize. So there is just, again, a level of entrepreneurism and spiritedness around learning about how this works that I, again, have not seen in generations preceding the ones that are hitting now in youth sports and in college and high school, et cetera. And I view Instagram, again, as being really powerful in that narrative. But yeah, to your point, your monetization window, your brand building window might actually be maximized in college versus in the pros, right? I mean, look how many Heisman winners in college football ended up having relatively unremarkable professional careers, but in their heyday in college were at peak relevance on a national, if not international level, right? I mean, the ability to be able to take advantage of that in various ways, but also for the folks who just want to run an in-person camp, or during the pandemic, you are the coxswain on Wisconsin's rowing team and you want to do virtual trainings for your fans who know that you're a part of an incredible program, and you want to be able to engage with them and cultivate the next generation of rowers in your sport. Being able to do that and being able to get compensated for that, I think it's a great thing. I think it was overdue as a professional and as a fan, and I'm just glad that there's more available to them now than there was before, and that Instagram and other social media platforms are even more relevant to them, not just as users themselves, but also in ways in which they can make a living, like I said earlier.
100%. And the average, professional careers are 2 to 4 years, depending on the sport. So it's big. It's big. I feel like nowadays obviously there are infinitely more celebrities, but their career lengths are so much shorter. So it's about capitalizing on those. And, a lot of people go for the home runs, like, let's just see how many followers I can get, where, I think at a certain point, everybody realizes that it's not about how many followers you have. It's about the depth that you have with those followers. So it's important.
To your point, you're building a community, right? And we talk at times to various folks, who are sort of on the latter stages of their careers or retired, and it's not as if you can't do these things. You've obviously missed some windows of time, and we actually invested a lot of resources prior to the Olympics and Paralympics with Paralympians and Olympians to say, prime the pup now, get ready months in advance on social so that you can capitalize on when you're at your peak relevance, because then you're building your fan base and your business far beyond just the 2 to 4 weeks that you are literally performing your craft in front of a global stage. Because guess what? All these people will go to follow you on Instagram, on Twitter, et cetera, and be ready for that moment was a big one. A big one for us, and one that I think it continues to resonate within the athlete community. But even take it to a different sport. I mean, look at football or basketball. You might be playing a college athletic or college sport, and you get drafted to the Detroit Lions or the San Francisco 49ers or the Washington Wizards, you've now just potentially had an opportunity to engage a new fan base who has an inherent interest in you.
Yeah.
And your career arc can present these various opportunities to continue to build what is truly a global fan base. And it's why so many athletes are followed by fans from countries around the world. But all of those moments in an athlete's career can represent opportunities to think about who your fans are, who your community is, and how you can uniquely engage them.
And I think that's true across all niches, right? Like the best example right now would be Squid Game, right? The number one Netflix show in like every country. The stars from that show went from like, I think the female star, she went from 400,000 followers to 16 million in under a week.
It's unreal.
And some of the other actors in that show didn't have socials. The star didn't have an Instagram until after they saw the growth of her. So think about, I mean, millions of dollars lost. You know, like the fact that she was already super active on social, had a ton of backlog of content, benefited her so extraordinarily, and now has, you know, the value of having 20 diehard million fans on social. I mean, you can't even put it into words.
Oh, absolutely. I did I can't remember the number, but I did an event with Brandon Marshall, former All-Pro wide receiver in the NFL, played for the Bears and the Broncos for a long time. And he talks very openly with the next generation of NFL athletes about how much money he left on the table by not doing certain things, whether it was off the field habits or whether not having an active presence on social digital, various partnerships. But now he has made tens of millions of dollars in his post-playing career by being intentional about those things, right? And you know, and every athlete is different, right? Some of these, you know, for some it really just might be, I want to be on social media to engage my friends and family, and that's all I care about, and that's great because not every athlete is built the same. There is no one size fits all. But when you're thinking about maximizing your earning potential, but also again building those communities, intention is an important piece of that. And even look at, you know, Naomi Osaka obviously is one of the most social media relevant athletes in the world. But, you know, the first big peak in her growth, if I recall correctly, was that first US Open run where she ended up beating Serena in the finals. And that's what took her to a level that then she could, you know, in a foundation she could then build upon and continue to grow and rise. And obviously her on the court success has fueled a lot of her off the court success. But, you know, how are you ready for the moment? And how are you readying yourself for the moment? Because those dollars aren't just coming from winning tournaments anymore. They're coming from everything around you, the sport, et cetera. And, you know, look no further than someone like Jeremy Lin way back in the day, you know, who was able to take, I mean, legend for Knicks fans like yourself.
Insanity. That's the best moment we've had in the last 30 years.
I mean, I'm a Thibodeau believer personally, so I'm hoping that that they get the playoffs again this year. But and also I'm a long-suffering Wizards fan, although I've enjoyed watching them play. But unfortunately, I feel like we're more in the camp of long-suffering Knicks fans than we are Celtics, Sixers, other franchises. So.
You had Jordan in the wrong years.
You mentioned Jordan on social. I honestly, one of the reasons I don't know if he would be my first follow is because I still, I still don't remember those years that fondly. I have, probably selective memory, but yeah, Jordan wearing 45 of the Wizards. I don't know if it felt like the greatest fit as a fan when I was watching, but I'm obviously very biased. So,
do you think that podcasts and sports podcasts will ever have a place on Instagram?
I think it already has a place. And it's just a matter of what the podcaster's goals are. You look at someone like JJ Redick and his podcast, they have 50,000 followers on Instagram. And I don't think he's posting full length eps, but he is engaging his fans there. They are providing unique content that supports the overall goals of the podcast. So full length stuff, while I do think there might be a place for that on Instagram, and there are some who are probably just using it literally as another distribution endpoint, I think there are numerous things that podcasters can be doing to not only engage fans, but also build and find new fans using services like Reels. And so it's really almost, to a degree, just figuring out what your expression is on a platform like Instagram. And again, it may very well not be post your hour-long, episode, because that might not be the place where people are coming to enjoy that, but they are coming to enjoy a snippet or a soundbite that they can share with their friends and family quickly on Instagram. That might breed a new follower or set of followers. It might be, a video of, Shannon Sharp on a show, exclaiming some hot take that is ripe for social, but that might be better suited than, say, posting a full-length episode of a podcast or even full-length on-air show for 30 minutes on a platform like IG or Facebook, et cetera. So yeah, I already think it has a place, but
yeah, more short form stuff for sure.
Yeah, just and listen to your audience, right? I mean, and I don't pretend to know all the places that people listen to podcasts. For me, like, I'm going on a drive this afternoon for 4 hours. That's when I'm listening to my podcast. Or if I'm on the subway going to work, that's when I'm listening to that stuff. When I'm on Instagram, it's not the same behavior, but if I can discover and be reminded of what content is available, and I can have something to sort of stoke my interest, that flame around whatever I'm interested in, that can be useful. And also, not for nothing, and I know you know this, Buster, but that's from an organic perspective. From a paid perspective too, there are great tools on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, that can help you find new followers who are interested in, who maybe aren't necessarily following your podcast, but who may be inherently interested in the topics and verticals that you're programming toward. And so how do you leverage some of those tools as well?
100%, 100%. What are your best tips in terms of staying on top of algorithm changes? Would it be to like test new features constantly? Because what I've always found over the years is anytime there's a new feature, you use it, it works, because the platform wants to incentivize you to use the new feature. Is that just happenstance, or?
I don't think it's happenstance per se, but what I will say is, to your point, Instagram specifically, but other social media platforms are pretty open about the things they care about in terms of priorities and products. So I would agree with you. It is well worth folks' time to invest in those things, whether it's Reels on Instagram that launched fully in August of 2020, whether it's commerce, which obviously we want to have be a linchpin of the user and creator experience on Instagram. But I hedge all of that by saying, ultimately, it's still about what your audience wants to see and how they want to engage you. Like, how do you think about entertaining and delighting your fans? And I used this term earlier, not one size fits all, because media companies, creators, et cetera, have different objectives. They have different strengths, right? And those strengths might not be in creating super highly creative, unique short form reels. Yes, Instagram might be disproportionately looking for more of that content, but do what's right for your fans, I think, is the number one principle. But again, if you read the literature, if you follow Instagram's blog, YouTube's blog, they're pretty open about where they're making investments, and it's probably a prudent decision to look into what those things can provide to you as a brand, but also if that's a way that you can better serve your audience. But I think it's not universally applicable to every single person who uses our service.
That makes sense. I remember there was a moment where Instagram launched Instagram polls, and if you put a poll on your story, you got like 20 times the views that you normally got. It's going from like getting tens of thousands of views to hundreds of thousands of views just by putting a poll on the story. And I find that that's even true now with like stickers and things like that. But it's really funny when there's random stuff like that. But for the bigger, like, real stuff, obviously, things like Reels, I've even seen, so that makes sense. Look at companies investing.
No, totally right. I mean, it sounds obvious, but those are good indicators, I guess you could say. of where we're trying to go, and even more broadly, and this is a macro trend in our industry on digital and social, but that, God, I can't believe I'm going to use this term, but that quote unquote pivot to video that everyone has been referencing for the past 6+ years, that was a thing, right? And there are business interests that these platforms have that are associated with video, but it also has to do with expression on our platforms, right? And does the audience have an appetite to actually consume video relative to photo? And obviously, I feel great about the fact that Instagram can cater to both, but it's, make no mistake, like Instagram does care about video, Facebook cares about video, YouTube has cared about video since its inception.
YouTube never had any love for photos.
Unless it was, listening to a song that was uploaded on YouTube, or there's just like cover art or something. There was no actual video playing while you listen. So,
right. Yeah. It's how a lot of people listen to music.
Totally. Count me as one of them. So
yeah, I have a whole like 700 song downloaded little collection of songs over the years. Long form writing. I know there are like Instagram blogs, like you mentioned, and things like that. But for let's say a sports media brand, or even a brand like Complex, right? Do you think that I guess I'm surprised, or maybe you can inform me if Instagram has done that, because I would imagine Instagram doesn't want people to leave their site, but heading to somebody's webpage would get them to leave the site unless you could write that long form on Instagram.
Yeah, well, to your comment generally about sort of leaving site and all those things. I mean, there are tools obviously that can drive those business interests where you might go to someone's own and operated platform and enjoy that content. And we actually are investing in looking at how do we make that functionality more accessible to the user base, versus, let's say, folks who have a certain follower threshold or established media companies who we know have those .coms, et cetera. But in terms of long form writing and its place on Instagram for sports brands or creators, I honestly don't know. I think given, just seeing where these companies have invested, I mean, Instagram's roots are so deeply embedded in a visual aesthetic. I don't know if it will necessarily cater to long form writing, although I say it almost ironically, given you just had Stephon Gilmore post his farewell to the Patriots fans on social as a written post. So it's not as if, even if though it's a visual, it's like it's the written word in a visual.
Captions do allow pretty long character count.
Yeah, totally. So there are some ways to express yourself through the written word, I guess you could say. But I do think it's awesome, just generally speaking, that you have Facebook and Bulletin, you have Substack. There are these meaningful places and ways that are giving athletes and others different ways to express themselves. I mean, look at it from an athlete perspective. You got Sloane Stephens, you have Aaron Andrews, those folks of the world who now through these services are able to express their brands and their opinions in unique ways that add to how their fans can enjoy them, follow them, be a part of their communities. And so again, I don't know if Instagram will necessarily be a place like Facebook Bulletin or like Substack. There are obviously opportunities for writing and written word to express themselves, but I'm just personally happy that there's more out there, because someone who grew up reading print journalism, who's used to opening up, the paper, the Washington Post on Wednesday to read a Tony Kornheiser article. I'm glad that it's having its comeback. I'm just glad that those things are more readily available than they were. The Athletic, as another example, and I personally get to enjoy that in a very different way than I enjoy opening up Instagram and watching a bunch of videos and other content.
I remember back when two moments in Instagram history that shook the space, when they added video and it was still the like count instead of views. That was like, oh, Instagram has videos now, like only like the little square videos. There was only one size, I remember. And then when Instagram added Instagram stories, people were like, oh no, they're ripping off Santa. People are so funny. It just takes them, people just don't like change, I think. it doesn't even matter that like it's in their best interest or it'll literally benefit their life. But those two moments, you know, Instagram's sort of chronology or discography, if you will, were like, whoa, you know, this I don't need to, for me, I was like, I don't need to spend as much on Facebook. I can spend more on Instagram.
There are some seminal moments that, yeah, again, you know, I don't say have changed the trajectory of these companies, but are sort of those big aha moments. And, you know, it's funny because I'm again talking to guys. You're basically a historian in this space, given how much you've lived this and you've
Only took a
seen.
few years.
But it's, I mean, so much has happened in that
Yeah.
period of time. But you know, I think the principle, the underlying principle, whether it's a Snapchat and creating that format, whether it's a TikTok, you know, creating a format that people are enjoying, it's actually how do platforms like Instagram listen to the market, listen to the needs and opportunities and challenges of content creators, of users, and what they enjoy, and provide a better experience. And to me, that's what it's all about, is enabling a better experience as a fan and as a creator, to express yourself, to build community, to bring people closer to you. So stories, I mean, it is the superpower of athletes, right? Because that is truly like the point and click. And guess what? A shit ton of fans come to get that ephemeral content on a daily basis because athletes are comfortable expressing themselves, and they get that content through a format that is unique from what you might see in feed or in reels, et cetera. But I think that's, again, the underlying principle that uh, that is really about serving the audience and serving the creators. And so that, for what's happened in the past, you know, 3, 5, 10 years, there will be more product development over the next 3, 5, 10 years that tries to do just that. And unfortunately, that's sort of the speed of light that our industry is moving at. So we're going to have to try to stay ahead of it as much as we can and read what's happening with users and creators and try to play into their preferences. And, you know, for me, part of those preferences were, okay, Instagram had content up to 1 minute. Well, there is clearly an appetite for people to enjoy content that's more mid-long form. How do we cater towards that? That happened in 2018. Look at the past couple of years. People have a real appetite for more creatively expressing themselves and consuming even more short form in a different way, swiping up, with what TikTok has been able to find success on. Great, let's serve fans. We don't have to pick one or the other all the time.
Yeah.
We can actually create a more robust, comprehensive, enjoyable experience.
That makes sense. No, 100%. It's been really fun to see, and you know, over the years, how the platforms have developed and adjusted and, you know, adapted things from each other. Like I thought Instagram stories were the easiest you could ever make content. And then I got these the glasses that Facebook came out with, the collaboration with Ray-Bans.
Mm-hmm.
And it just made me realize how much easier it's gonna get one day, you know, to where you don't even think, you just have to say like, or you just have to think for that to post, and then it posts. Like the Ray-Bans aren't that far off. I tell it to take a photo or hold down the thing, and it takes a photo and it's on my phone. Like I thought Instagram stories were the furthest we could go. Obviously I was wrong.
No, to your point, maybe not even require taking your phone out anymore necessarily, to shoot stuff in the wild. But again, these developments are not very far off, and that's where the innovation is at, I think, an all-time high, which is amazing. And maybe the world's more ready for it in 2021 than they were in 2011, and when some of the companies were starting to think about these different kinds of opportunities or environments even. So I'm really excited for what that future holds. And I'm curious to see, yeah, where your head goes when it comes to all the things that you're juggling when it comes to creating content and engaging your fans, and how you're making decisions. Because yeah, the Ray-Ban stories thing is wild. I wonder if it's going to inspire you to think about different formats or franchises or things like that to help entertain your fans in ways that you may not have been able to do before either.
Totally. No, there are a lot of things about that makes people a little bit more comfortable. And it's true that like somebody being 5% more comfortable in a video makes it dramatically better. Like it's insane how far it goes. somebody, being more comfortable that there isn't a giant camera in their face, and they're like, smile, it's like, it's more, some people don't even know. Obviously you tell them you're filming and it has a little light, but it's not as in your face. It doesn't feel like as many people are going to see it as they're going to see it.
Yeah, it's a little unrelated, but I would say sort of tangentially related. When we first met, you told me the story, and I will literally never forget it, because you were giving me your play-by-play on, as a high schooler starting to create a community and create content. And you said you had this, I feel like your audience, if they haven't heard already, maybe they have, and I'm just, reiterating or regurgitating, but you made this comment to me about how one day you decided you were going to go live and you were going to just start like broadcasting to your fans. And I don't remember your exact term, but it was something along the lines of like, the first time you did it, it was like effing terrible. And it was like the worst thing that you felt like you've ever created your entire life. And you wanted to like jump back under the covers and crawl into a ball and shut the world out. But then you said, and maybe it was, I think you said the most important thing that you did after that was you went live again, and you just said, okay, I'm going to try it again. And it got better and it got better. And your fans, started to create their own behavior of, well, hey, Buster's going live. Like I'm going to tune in. And maybe it started off as cringeworthy and it turned into shit, you and I 2021 doing a podcast together. But I'll never forget that story, because one, I think it just illustrates that this journey as a content creator, as a brand, it ain't easy. And you have to go through some bumps in the road. But that was one of the lasting memories I've had about our very first interaction, which I hope your fans can take that away from this podcast, given I have no insights to deliver to your fans. But I can at least share your story on your behalf if you haven't already, because I think it's an incredible story, and hopefully is inspiring to who I imagine to be a lot of fans of yours who are actually aspiring content creators themselves.
I think about it. It's like there are two types of creators on social, right? There are those who had the foundation of being an athlete, or a college athlete, or a professional athlete. And then there are those who had no foundation at all. I didn't make my basketball team my sophomore year, so I started broadcasting the games instead. So like you always, and that was like a foundation, but nobody knew who I was. Nobody even listened to the games. But just saying that, I had won best in the country for play-by-play, which I did my junior year, was enough for like, just in whatever way you can, try to get an ounce of credibility when you're younger. And then, just the rest is persistency, but or just persistence in general. But I have so much respect for the people who were able to build social followings without having that foundation, because I know how difficult it can be. And to that story, which I didn't even remember, that's hilarious. And it's very true. I was probably even underselling how terrible those early streams were. But
maybe bring back the archives. Let's
I have them in a Dropbox folder somewhere, because somebody I think Whistle Sports, we did a little doc on my high school years together like 2 years back, and they asked if they could have that footage, so it's in there. It's just so cringy. Wow. I can't even think about it without cringing. But I had to get access to Facebook Live. They didn't have it on pages. They only had it in specific countries. So I just made an account and said I was from one of those countries. So I was going live on Facebook before any news company, anybody in the United States. And I think that's one of the reasons why I got a little bit of a head start. And then all these sports pages were like, how do you do that? I don't know, just do it. And then they started having me stream on their pages, and I would do it for free in exchange for being able to promote, my new basketball outlet, which was the one right before Hoops Nation. And then eventually that's how I was able to grow Hoops Nation a little bit. So it's just funny how it goes. But the point there is I have a lot of respect for the thousands of creators who are able to build in their niche without any, foundation of being on somebody else's network, right?
Yeah.
And a ton of respect for the other people too. It's just two different worlds. And I think the post-athlete career is incredibly difficult, and the pre-career is also incredibly difficult. um so just all different stages, but worth thinking about for everybody.
Yeah, and also thinking about, how hard are you willing to hustle? Because again, by sheer fact that we got connected through someone, and again, we mentioned Brian earlier, but Brian is not only one of the most connected people, he's one of the most astute, hardworking people. And so it's almost like a game recognized game kind of deal where he recognized how hard you were willing to work and had already worked, that he would be willing to make, again, further introductions because they would be useful to you, they'd be useful to me, they'd be useful to him, to whoever else. But that's probably something that is worth you sharing with your fans at some point, is how hard your hustle actually is. Because the easier it looks for folks on social and digital, the harder it probably is to make it look that easy. And I can probably say that's the case for you, since you're grinding on a daily basis.
Yeah, you say that about like the great NBA players all the time. Like the easier the game looks for them, the better they probably are, and those are the players that are going to be all-time legends, right? And I think those things definitely apply to social. But it's just as much important, and you've done this your whole career, but doing the things that you enjoy, right? That's 99% of the battle, in my opinion. Like, I was a terrible student because I didn't enjoy it. I was a great basketball fan because obviously I enjoyed it. I was a really good fan. And I, enjoyed broadcasting and still do, and things like that. But
I think we're lucky
yeah,
to be, well, I would say one of the few people, but a smaller percentage than is ideal, to be able to marry some of our passion with our professions, as it were. And you hope more people have the opportunity to do that. I know you and I could glamorize what we do for a very long time, but I think we also know that it's the unglamorous stuff about our roles that
for sure.
actually makes us even more successful, hopefully, in finding success rather. So yeah, a lot of that stuff that people will never see, that you're having to do and focus on, especially for you as a content creator. I'm curious, not to put the mic back on you, but since you are so prolific across social and digital and engaging your fans and building your brands, do you have a wish list for the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the YouTubes of the world, for what you would like to see in order for you to continue evolving your brands and being able to better serve, and delight your fans?
I think I think the biggest thing that people on Instagram always tell me, and it just always comes back to this: there's no, it's very difficult to get support on Instagram as like a creator, a page or brand or anything. You need to have personal relationships, really, if you want to have any sort of contact. And I think that's been one of the biggest things, not for me necessarily, but for other people. Um, I know that, if there was like a support email thread, channel, etc., that would dramatically change like tens of thousands of creators' happiness levels and like comfort levels. Because I've even heard this, and obviously, again, I'm talking more about other people than myself, but like, there are people, and this is for other platforms too. Like, I saw this tweet from a girl on YouTube who lost her account that was wrongly deactivated. They said she like is a hockey player, and they said that there was like nudity on her page, and they deactivated it, and there was no support, right? So those, like, the fear of those sorts of things, if you do go full time in these social mediums, I mean, it's pretty intense. It's like getting fired on the spot. And then, I think that's sort of the best thing that I can say. And
Yeah, it's an area that there are obviously over 1 billion users on the platform, but the benefit of Instagram, and people take it it's so meaningful to them, whether it's in their day-to-day lives and connecting with friends and family, or building their brands and their businesses, and how do we continue to do a better job of delivering support, avoiding some of the mistakes where, yeah, an account might be wrongly deactivated or given a strike, et cetera. And there's definitely work to be done there, and not just focusing on, on the head of the user base, the partner base, et cetera, because a lot of people are trying to turn their passions into livings on our platform. So they are trying to make sure they can connect with their friends and family across the world. And it can be frustrating. It's been personally frustrating at times too, but I almost feel like, case in point on what you're saying, and now I'm remembering it after a few months, but given, Buster, you and I go back for at least 4+ years now, and obviously you've developed such a substantial series of businesses on social and digital. I remember texting you because I got this email, and
Oh
thank
no.
you, thank you in advance for not sharing, my email or personal contact information, but I got this email from this guy who was calling himself Buster Shear. And the email looked so similar to what your email is. And I was like 90% of the way to responding to this note and like helping with this request. And it turned out to be, unfortunately, caught it, I think, as I texted you, like, I was like, hey,
Yeah.
can you just confirm this thing? And you responded like, I didn't send you an email. And I was 90% of the way there, because you're obviously a buddy of mine and I wanted to
Yeah.
try to help. But it goes to show you, I think, the need, but also even some of the desperation in people trying to figure out ways creatively to get support or get a response. And that one was actually malicious. That was someone who was trying to do some sort of malicious activity, but leveraging Buster's good name to try and get somebody on the inside to do it. But it was crazy. I'm so grateful that you responded to me so
Yeah.
quickly, because
Likewise.
I'm about to hit submit. Let me check with Buster real quick over text, and then thank God that saved me. But yeah, I think it
You should
illustrates
have.
your
You
point a little bit.
should. You should have just been like, yeah, let's just hop on Zoom real quick, and then it'll be good. See who joins.
Totally. Man, Buster's changed his appearance a lot over the past couple of years,
Yeah. LeBron James
Yeah.
joins the Zoom.
That is wild. But no, I appreciate your feedback there too, because again, I think there are areas for us to improve in, and I'm sure your fans and fellow content creators appreciate you representing their interests too, because we are trying to get better at delivering support, and just feeling like people can invest on Instagram, but also feel like they're being rewarded for that investment as well.
The only other thing that I would say is Instagram is the only platform Hoops Nation isn't verified on.
Oh man, I was waiting to see when verification would come up as a topic.
It's the last one. Everybody else hooks it up. Even Facebook. Even Facebook, the same company.
We could talk offline about how we can put you in a position to get verified. For all your listeners, people tuning in, for the record, I do not have the
Golden
control.
touch.
I don't have I don't have access to the switch that can get flipped. If I did, I'd be the most popular person to work at Instagram.
People ask me how to get verified, so I can only imagine how many people ask you. And I think I said this to Adam as well. Like, that has got to be the most annoying question ever of all time for anybody who works at any social platform. One of my best friends used to work at Instagram, Chase Elman. And I mean, the amount of people that would ask him, like, it's mind blowing. So it's mostly a joke, but
that blue check mark, there's something about it, right? So
people are willing to like jump off a bridge for it. It's the craziest, like, ridiculous thing that it doesn't matter. Like, it does, but it doesn't. It's just the weirdest thing ever.
I agree. It gets even weirder for me when I get a message from an athlete or an influencer content creator, and it's like, hey, my girlfriend's brother is an aspiring DJ and really needs to get verified on Instagram. I'm like, this is actually where I'm glad I don't have the controls to do this
Yeah.
because why would I respond to that? So, and look no further too, that I'm not verified on Instagram. So there is a bar that one has to meet, and it's applicable across the board. But yeah, I can't tell you the amount of that DJ example is a real life example. And there are many permutations of that example that I'll receive on a nearly daily, if not weekly basis. So for all your listeners, unfortunately, if you DM me, I'm happy to respond and make your acquaintance. But unfortunately, that is a request I would not be able to fulfill on your behalf.
You know, if I had the diamond button or whatever, I would be like Oprah. I would just be throwing it out to everybody. Anybody that asks, you got it. Just be, you get a check. You get a check.
That's your newest content franchise, right? Like your sweepstakes and running for who's going to get verified and make their year. So
imagine it was a lottery.
Totally.
There was a verification lottery. Yeah, no, that sounds very Black Mirror-esque. Verification lottery. Who gets to live? Who gets to go to the next round?
Seriously. No, yeah, probably will be on the next season of Black Mirror, whenever that comes out. Great show, by the way. I love it in all its commentary. So,
well, thank you so much for doing this. This was awesome. Obviously, there's nothing really to promote because everybody already uses Instagram. It's one of the very few things where everybody already uses it. So keep using it, everybody. And thank you so much again for doing this. This was really fun.
No, man, thank you for having me. I know this is a little bit overdue, so appreciate you being patient with me as I try to get my schedule sorted. But like I said, above all else, glad you and your family are safe and healthy. I am hopeful that we will have the occasion to do this in person sometime sooner than later, whether it's you coming down to the DC area, me coming back to New York anytime soon. Really appreciate you having me, man. This is a fun way to spend a Friday morning. I might have preferred, an adult beverage over a coffee, but I guess I should probably wait until a little later in the day. But no, man, it's great to see you and great to see everything that you've been doing and following you on your journey. So again, for your fans, like they might be listening in to hear some of my commentary, which they should probably just ignore and focus on your story because it is 10 times better than my story. I promise you that.
Well, I would disagree, but I appreciate you saying that. Again, thank you so much. And for everybody else, see you next time. Peace.
All right, man. Have a good weekend. See ya.